Okay, so now we've got our hardware installed and our electronics all connected up. The last thing we want to do is just a basic final setup. So I'm going to go through setting the correct amount of neck relief, adjusting the action of the guitar, so this is the string height from the fretboard, checking and then adjusting the intonation, and lastly we'll check and adjust the pickup height. Now a lot of these things you may want to come back and revisit after you're more accustomed to the guitar, after you played it for a little while. So consider these starting points really. Okay, so the first thing we do whenever we're doing a setup is tune the guitar. We want to make sure the correct amount of tension's on the neck before we make any changes. We just want to check the neck relief. So you can do this a couple of ways. You can use a steel rule. You can use feeler gauges under that to check the exact measurements. Probably a more intuitive way to do that though is just to fret at the first fret, the last fret, and then just tap down on the 12th fret. Now if that string's laying flat, which this is, I'd want to increase the amount of relief, and that increases the amount of forward bow in the neck, which would then help with clearance of those frets. If on the other hand the action was too high, I'd want to tighten the truss rod, which would take tension out of the neck and flatten the fretboard out. So the way to adjust the truss rod, first just remove the base screw from your truss rod cover. And just push that out of the way. There'll be an Allen key for adjusting your truss rod. In your packaging, it'll probably be in the same packaging as your cable. And as I said, I want to introduce more relief to this neck, so I'm going to loosen the truss rod. To loosen the truss rod, I'm going to turn it counterclockwise. Obviously, if I wanted to flatten the neck out, I'd be turning it clockwise, and that would be tightening the truss rod. So just turn about 1/8 of a turn to start with. You don't really want to make major adjustments each time, so just work incrementally and just check again. So that's increased the amount of relief there a little. Okay, so you can see we're actually pressing down that string now. There's a little bit of room there to move. So I'm just going to create a little bit more relief by just doing another quarter turn. Okay, and that's good. So that's what you do there. You just keep making those adjustments until you're happy. Now the next thing we want to check is the action, which is the distance the strings are up from the fretboard. Now action's fairly subjective. It's really up to you. It's subjective, as I said, but if you're not sure, a good starting point is to aim for 2.4 mil on the low E and 1.6 on the high E and measure those at the 12th fret. So you can use a steel rule, or in this case I'm going to use a string action ruler. Now it's important to remember when you're measuring this, you're measuring from the top of the fret to the underside of a string. So this one's pretty close, I would say, but if I did want to adjust that action, I'd make that adjustment at the bridge. So as you can see, I'm raising the action by turning that counterclockwise. So if I wanted to lower the action, I'd be tightening it. And tightening it will put the post further into the bushing, and that will lower the action. Okay, so that's got us back to pretty much where we started, so that's good. Okay, so the last thing I want to check is the intonation, and that's really just checking the guitar's in tune with itself. Now, just quickly, if we have a look at this bridge, you'll see it's on an angle, it's got a slight compensation, and that's to compensate for the additional mass of these strings, and that's really what we're doing when we're fine-tuning the intonation like this. So first, just make sure we're in tune again. Okay, so when we're checking intonation, we're essentially wanting to make sure the guitar's in tune with itself. So if I play the open string, that's an E. Now I also want to be able to get an E at the 12th fret, which is an octave up. So also want to get the same note an octave up. So as you can see, that's just a little sharp. I just want to hit that with the same amount of attack as well. So you can see the open string's just a little flat. Again, now these are new strings, so probably should have stretched them out a little first to get to take some of the slackness out of the strings. But hopefully we'll be okay here. So again, just with the same amount of action or the same force on the string, you see we're just a little sharp. Not too bad, but just a little bit sharp. So the way to make minor adjustments like that is to adjust the intonation adjustment screws, and they're located just on the inside of the bridge. So you need a flat nose screwdriver, a small one. As I said, we're a little sharp, so I want to increase the length of the string. To do that, I would turn counterclockwise, which would push that saddle a little further back. And that just increases the distance the string can vibrate. So its first point of contact is the nut, second point of contact is the saddle. So if we push that saddle further back, we're just increasing the length or the scale length of that string slightly. So if you see now, I've just overcorrected a little. So I'd need to bring that saddle closer to the front just to get that right. Now you would do that across all your strings and just fine tune until everything's intonated well. The very last thing I would check is the pickup height. Now pickup height again is subjective. It really depends on what you're hearing to some extent. But if you're not sure or you're looking for just a starting point, I would aim for 2.4 mil clearance on the bass side and about 2 mil clearance on the treble side. But it's not quite that simple. We need to hold the string down at the last fret. And we also want to measure from the top of the individual pole pieces to the underside of the string. So as I said, 2.4 mil. So the pickup's a little high there. So the way to adjust that is just to adjust the mounting screws. So as I said, I'm just going to bring that down a little. So counterclockwise to lower the height of the pickup. And again, just hold them down at the last fret. I could still come down a little further. Pretty much spot on now. But again, that's going to be subjective, so a lot of that will depend on how the guitar sounds to you. So that's really it. That's a basic final setup. As I said, you may want to come back to and repeat some of these steps after you've become more accustomed to the neck especially. And that's really the process. So from here, we're going to plug the guitar in and test the guitar. Unfortunately, I'm left-handed, so it's going to be a little hard for me to do a full demonstration of this guitar, but we will just run through the different pickup settings and just test everything's working correctly. Okay, so I'm in treble position now. We can hear our volumes rolling off. Our tones rolling off. Okay, middle position now, which is a combination of both pickups. And our final position. Appears to be working well. So the next thing I would do to test the guitar, pop the pickup selector in the middle position and turn the volume up to 10 on both, and just take your hands away from the guitar. Now you should hear no signs of hum at all, so no electrical interference. If you do hear any hum, any interference, it probably means there's an issue with your ground circuit. So the black wires that we installed are in a circuit that we're connecting up all the different components and then connecting to the bridge. You may find one of the connections has gotten loose, so it would pay just to check that first. Okay, and the last thing I would check is just the neck itself. I would play each individual fret and so on, all the way up the neck on each string. What you're listening for there are any dead notes or any signs of fret buzz. Now, if you did come across any problems, you would put the guitar back up on the bench and you would check your action and check the amount of neck relief you have. Okay, so that's the end of the build. I hope you've enjoyed building your guitar as much as I have. Thanks for watching.